Imagine living in a world where you have little control over your own body, where your children can be taken away from you at any moment. This was the reality of enslaved black women. Our documentary will explore the ways slavery denied black women their most basic rights, how they suffered under the system, and how they resisted and fought for survival.
When laws were written to not protect black women, but to ensure they remained powerless. The Virginia Slave Code laws of 1662 declared that any child that was born to an enslaved woman was also enslaved. This meant that enslavers had financial reason to abuse and exploit black women, so they could increase their wealth through forced pregnancies. Women had no legal protection, no right to say no, or no way to escape. A woman that endured this sexual abuse was Bethany Vaney. Bethany Vaney was an enslaved woman in Virginia who later wrote about living in the constant fear of sexual violence and how she relied on her faith to survive in her narrative, The Narrative of Bethany Vaney, a Slave Woman, 1889. For many black enslaved women, one of the worst parts of slavery was that they could be taken advantage of at any time and no one would be able to stop it. Enslavers believed that they had complete power over enslaved women, including their body. A racist and cruel lie that spread about black women was that black women were naturally more sexual, which was used as an excuse to justify this abuse they endured. Many black women not only suffered just physical pain, but deep emotional scars as they were forced into situations they never chose to be in. One of the many women that endured this abuse was Louisa Pickett. Louisa Pickett was born into slavery and sold into abuse. In the narrative of Louisa Pickett, the Octoroon slave, she shared her painful story. Her mother was enslaved, but her father, Randolph, was a free man and her master. Because of her light skin, she and her mother were sold to a white man. Meant to be a servant, Louisa was instead forced into a life of suffering. Her story reveals the cruelty of slavery and the powerlessness of enslaved women.
Black women weren't the only ones who were hurt by sexual violence during slavery. Black men, like husbands, brothers, and fathers, saw the pain too. They had to watch the women they loved being taken and abused, and they couldn't stop it. This shows how slavery hurt entire families. It wasn't just about control. It was about power, pain, and breaking people apart. One formerly enslaved man named Henry said, "They could take her away from me at any time. I couldn't do anything." And that broke my heart. A woman in hiding. Some women tried to escape their enslavers' control in whatever way they could. One of the most incredible stories of resistance comes from Harriet Jacobs, who went through extreme lengths to protect herself. Harriet Jacobs was enslaved in North Carolina and was constantly pursued by her enslaver, Dr. James Norcom, who was also called Dr. Flint in her book. She knew that if she ran away, he would punish her family, so she came up with a different plan. She hid in her grandmother's attic. The attic was so small that she couldn't even stand up. She stayed there for 7 years, peeking through a tiny hole to watch her children go from afar. Eventually, she escaped and gained her freedom, but she never forgot what she endured. Jacobs later wrote her story to show the world how terrible slavery was, especially for women. She wrote, "Slavery is terrible for men, but it is far more terrible for women."
As slavery wasn't brutal enough, enslaved women were often forced to have children, not because they wanted to, but because enslavers saw it as a way to make more money. Some enslavers ran breeding farms where women were forced into sexual relationships to produce more enslaved laborers. Even when a mother loved her child dearly, or more than anything, she still had no power to protect them. Enslaved children could be sold away at any moment. Many women tried to prevent this pregnancy or even attempted to escape or avoid this horrible fate.
One of the many women that endured this abuse was Sojourner Truth. Truth wrote The Narrative of Sojourner Truth, where she tells the story of her life as an enslaved woman in New York. Truth explains how her children were sold away from her and how she faced sexual violence and exploitation. Truth escaped slavery and became an activist for abolition and women's rights. Many like Sojourner Truth became activists fighting for the rights of women and black people long after slavery ended. While enslaved black women suffered from abuse and violence, the wives of the slave owners had their own struggles. Many of them knew about their husband forcing themselves on enslaved women, but they couldn't do much about it. Some were angry at their husbands, but others blamed the enslaved women instead. This led to jealousy, hatred, and even violence. White women on southern plantations knew the painful truth about their husbands' relationships with enslaved women. Many felt powerless to stop it, and some channeled their frustration into hatred, not for their husbands, but for the enslaved women. In Mary Chestnut's diary from March 22, 1861, she wrote, "The most painful thing in life is to see the men who are married to us and who should be everything to us and who are, as a rule, indifferent to our feelings, have children by these creatures, and to know that there is nothing we can do about it." This reveals the complex emotions of jealousy and helplessness many white women experience in the face of their husbands' abuses. James Norcom's wife, Mary Norcom, never publicly talked about the abuse her husband inflicted on Harriet Jacobs. She never spoke out, not in letters, not in journals, not in court. Her silence speaks volumes. In Harriet's own words, "The mistress was jealous and spiteful. She did not believe the girl, but she hated her all the same."
Even in the face of so much pain, enslaved women never stopped fighting. Some ran away, even knowing the risk. Others passed down secret knowledge of their culture and tradition to their children, keeping their heritage alive. Many, like Sojourner Truth, used their voices to demand justice even after slavery ended.
Even though slavery ended, the fight didn't end with slavery. The exploitation of black women's bodies continued through history, and it still happens today. Racial inequality, gender-based violence, and reproductive right issues all have roots in slavery. Black women today still face higher rates of violence and medical neglect. By learning this history, we honor the strength of those who came before us and fight for a better future where no one's rights are stripped away. By remembering their struggle, we honor their strength and work for a better future.